Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion and Smoke Transport Briefing for Friday, October 27th. Over the last 1 to 2 weeks, we've seen precipitation mainly over the northern third of the Great Basin, with some areas seeing above normal precipitation in southern and eastern Idaho and Wyoming and far northern Nevada, but most areas below normal. Very little precipitation has occurred over the southern half of the Great Basin. Over the last 72 hours, we do have a cold front moving through the region, so we do have some new snow over the northern third of the region, especially up into the higher terrain of central Idaho, where we've seen over 6 inches of snow, and over eastern Idaho and Wyoming, and then lesser amounts further south, but even some new snow as far south as the Sierra and parts of central Utah. Our snow depth is shown on the right, and you can see from the snowpack that we are above normal for the time of year up north, and generally near or below normal in most other areas. The satellite loop from this morning shows the cold area of low pressure in the west with the cold front sweeping through the Great Basin over the next 24 hours or so. We will have a secondary area of low pressure dropping down from the north, giving us a reinforcing shot of cold air this weekend. So for later today, we will see that cold front dropping into Idaho and across the northern Rockies. This will allow for some showers over the eastern half of the Great Basin, along with some breezy winds. Transport winds will be, or ventilation index rather, with the transport winds will be very good over the eastern half of the Great Basin as this front swings through. So our transport winds will be gusty, especially in the higher terrain of Wyoming and Utah, and into parts of Idaho, and much lower wind speeds further west behind the front. And then mixing heights will still remain relatively high for the time of year. As we move into Saturday, this secondary cold front drops south, so again we will see a reinforcing shot of colder air. Most of this front will be on the dry side for most of the Great Basin, but we will see some showers over the eastern areas of the Great Basin, so eastern, southeast Utah will see some light shower activity with this secondary front this weekend. Otherwise, winds will be kicked up and certainly mixing kicked up with the cold front, so we will see good ventilation region-wide. And our transport winds will also be on the rise, mostly in the 20 to 30 mile per hour range across most areas of the Great Basin, with generally high mixing heights. As we move into Sunday, this cold front will swing southeast and move into the Rockies and into the southwest. So we will see a building ridge of high pressure over western areas, but we will still see very cold temperatures on Sunday, along with inversions likely in place as this ridge starts to build in from the west. And also new snowfall, obviously, in the higher terrain. Again, very cold daytime temperatures along with very cold overnight lows. Dispersion will remain quite good over southern and eastern areas and start to diminish up north in Idaho and over western Nevada as that ridge starts to build in. Transport winds, as the secondary front moves through, winds will shift to the north and be quite gusty over the southern half of the Great Basin, along with high mixing heights. So again, our temperatures will be on the cool side this week, and again, another reinforcing shot of cold air this weekend. So we'll see most areas with highs in the 40s or even 30s up north, still in the 60s and 70s down in the far south. We will see a gradual warm up going into the early part of next week, so highs will rebound with highs in the 40s up in Idaho, Wyoming, and 40s or 50s in Utah by Tuesday. And then we will see a return of 50s and 60s to most of western and northern Nevada going into the middle of next week. However, very cold morning lows. We are expecting hard freezes over the northern two-thirds of the Great Basin going through the weekend and into early next week. Some of our coldest mornings will be this weekend, where we will see single digits over parts of Idaho, even northeast and eastern Nevada, especially in the higher terrain, and then most other locations in the teens or 20s with the exception of the far south. Those lows will gradually improve going towards the early to mid portion of next week, but still remain cold, with all areas still seeing that continued hard freeze. 3-day amounts of precipitation, so with the cold fronts that are moving through, just some light precipitation additional up in central Idaho, and then we will see some precipitation over eastern Utah that has really been on the dry side of precipitation in the Great Basin, and this is mostly either today or also with that secondary front this weekend. As we move into next week, we will see the ridge of high pressure building in from the west, so gradually warming temperatures, but still inversions in place with poor ventilation. And then similar conditions on Tuesday, and then into Wednesday as well, still that ridge. We could see some clouds spill over the top of the ridge into Idaho going into the middle part of next week, but otherwise we will start to see some improvements with dispersion as well. And then the next cold front starts to approach later next week, moving into parts of Idaho and northwest Nevada. So our precipitation for Monday through Wednesday, after that secondary cold front moves through, again with the ridge building in, we will see drier conditions region-wide. And then going towards later next week is where we will see that next front approach. So we will see some showers starting by Thursday or Friday over western northern Nevada and up into Idaho. And then the 7-day total precipitation obviously takes into account all of our cold fronts over the next week. The 8 to 14-day outlook, taking us from November 3rd through the 9th, shows warmer and still wetter conditions over the northern half of the region. So again, we will see a return to some warmer conditions after this very cold period, but still expecting cold fronts to move through with fluctuating temperatures and bringing us chances of precipitation, especially over the northern half of the Great Basin. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back on Monday for the latest updates.